All right. That's not straightened out. There we go. Cool. All right. Is this thing operating? Is anyone there? Anyone? Oh, there we go. Okay. My laptop was showing that this thing was not going, so oh boy, I got scared there for a minute when it was not showing. It was showing as upcoming, and it's like, no, I'm live. I feel alive. I think. Yes, okay. We're officially live. Cool. Good to know that this thing is working. In between the lanes, hello. Cloudy 341 Blade. Hello. Hope you guys are doing good. David, hope you're doing good. Dover, it's quite the weekend. We got some hot topics, unfortunately. I guess things could be worse. But the Xfinity race was great, as always. I'm trying to think. I think Atlanta has been the only bad Xfinity race this year. And that was because everyone ran a single file line and then it ended on fuel mileage. Other than that, I'm struggling to think of a bad Xfinity race this year. So that tells you everything you need to know about the Xfinity Series. Cup Series side of things, I slept on it. I rewatched the highlights. I'm still on the mindset that I liked the race. I enjoyed it. Wasn't great. The ending was a little disappointing, but I still thoroughly enjoyed the race, okay? It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't insane, but, 7.5 out of 10, I think is what I said yesterday. I still feel the same way I felt yesterday. I liked it. I'm sorry. So many people are being negative about this race. Well, guess what? I actually liked it. I don't know. Maybe just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe. Dover was your first ever NASCAR race? Well, that's cool. If you're talking about like being at the track, going to a race, I hope you had fun. I always love being at the track. It's always fun. You really can't not have fun at Challenge. I said challenge, I meant track. I was reading the comments up there. You want to know what's crazy? Hamlin is 6 wins away from catching Harvick and 9 away from tying Kyle Busch on the all-time wins list. It's crazy if he ties Harvick. Yeah, I mean, Hamlin's won throughout his whole career. I'm trying to think of his last winless season. He's won this year, obviously. He's won last year, 22, 21, 20, 19. Did he win in 18? I think he won in 18. If not 18, maybe. 17, he almost made the Final Four, so he won that year. 16, I'm sure he won somewhere in there. 15, I know he won that spring Martinsville race because Gordon should have won it, but he sped on pit road. 14, he won at Talladega, made the Final Four that year. 13, he almost went winless in 13, but he won that last race at Homestead. Okay, so Cloudy 341 Blade says 2018 was the last time Denny Hamlin went winless. Yeah, so I mean he's won throughout his whole career. We got to go 6 years back to his last winless streak or winless season, and I don't even know how far back we have to go before that to go to his most recent winless season. So he wins a lot. There's a reason he's a future Hall of Famer. I know people crap on him for the no championships thing, and it's a funny joke. It's a funny meme, but, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He's got 3 Daytona 500s. He's got 54 wins now. I mean, you can't deny that he's pretty darn good. So he's won at all different types of racetracks. So, yeah, it's no shock to see him up there that high on the wins list. What, he's tied 12th now with Lee Petty. So, once again, it's no shock to see him up there. As for against Kyle Busch, I think he'll win at a higher rate than Kyle Busch, but it still may take him a couple of years to catch up to Kyle because I think Kyle Busch, I know they're not great this year, but I still think Kyle Busch wins a race this year. I think he wins one next year. I think he continues that trend of winning at least one race every season. But Hamlin, I mean, he could go out and win 7, 8 races this year at the rate he's going. Maybe even more. Maybe he could put together a Larson 2021 season and just keep winning. But the funniest thing is that Hamlin, all of his top fives this season are wins. Because if you look at the other places that he's been competitive, Phoenix, he was fighting for the lead and he spun himself out. Texas, 2 to go, fighting for the lead, and he wrecks himself. Talladega, they had a great strategy. They were going to be in position to fight for the win, and then the whole Toyota crash happened. So Denny Hamlin, he only has top fives in the races that he's won, but at the same time, he's been fast elsewhere despite not having the actual results. So if they can just get it together, they could be very well way far ahead in this thing in terms of the regular season championship. Larson versus Hamlin at the end. Yeah. So I rewatched not all of it. I had skipped through some of it because it was rough. The 2020 Kansas race between Harvick and Logano. The Harvick-Logano thing is still more frustrating. Aeroblocking, whatever, but Logano was like aggressively blocking. I mean, it wasn't like terrible. It wasn't like borderline crashing, but he was, swerving up and down the track, washing up the track. Not washing, but, that process of just slowly drifting up the track to block Harvick, get Harvick loose, get Harvick tight, whatever he had to do. Whereas yesterday, and Harvick was always there. Like, he quickly caught up. He could quickly fall away, but he would quickly get right back to Joey. Larson, it took him a while to get from a second and a half down to a second, down to half a second. Like, Larson was definitely better, but it was not like a huge difference that I feel like everyone's trying to make. Like, should Larson have gotten by? Yeah, probably. He was better, but he wasn't 0.2 quicker, half second quicker. I think it was, I don't know how much, but it's just, I don't know. It was a little frustrating for sure, but I think it's being blown a little bit out of proportion, but we'll see. We'll see if they end up doing anything with the car. The Xfinity race at Dega, nobody wanted to challenge for the win. That was just the last lap at Dega for the Xfinity Series race. The whole race itself was good. It's just that all those guys up there, they had not really been familiar with being in that position, so they didn't know what to do. So Duke Chronic says racing sucked as usual. I disagree with you there. I enjoyed the race yesterday. Sure, the ending was not as exciting as we wanted it to be, but overall, throughout the race, I watched Chase Elliott go from 29th to 5th. I watched Kyle Larson go from 21st to 2nd. I watched Martin Truex Jr. in that first stage alone go from 15th to the stage win. So, I mean, I saw a lot of good racing yesterday. I think people are just being negative towards the end because of the end, but that's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who liked this race. Maybe people are mad, as Denny Hamlin said, because he won. Maybe that's not the case, but I like the race. Sure, the ending was frustrating, but I still like the race. Hendrick Motorsports versus Gibbs this week. Yeah, we'll talk about Kansas later. I want to talk about Dover first, but yeah, Kansas. Ooh, I'm excited for Kansas this week. One experience, definitely one of those sporting events that you want to be there in person. Yeah, in between the lanes. You don't have to watch commercials. You don't have to see the silly cartoon graphics. You don't have to look at fans when a restart is happening. I was very frustrated this week with Fox. I think that people crap on them a little bit too much, but this week was a rough one, so I hope they have their meetings this week, they adjust accordingly, and we can just see the racing. Thank you, Fox, if you're listening. We talked about that. James, Dennis, Allen, Hamlin. I always forget that he's got 4 names. I have a feeling this is Hamlin's year. Oh boy, here we go. This is the best that he's ever been. More confident than his pit crew is easily the best on pit road. 8.7, that's insane. If the team keeps doing that, he's going to be deadly. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I get what you're saying, that there's something different with Hamlin this year. He just seems more confident, like you said. The pit crew's been insane for him this year. I mean, yesterday they got him the lead. They got him the lead in the win at Richmond. But yeah, they're winning tons of races right now. And as I said earlier, I mean, they could have a couple more if it wasn't for poorly timed cautions or just being caught up in an unfortunate incident. Some of it was self-inflicted, Texas, the caution with 12 to go, whatever. Hamlin most likely had that thing won unless Brad Keselowski could get by Chase Elliott really quick. But other than that, I mean, he had that thing won. And then, he wrecked himself late. So that was partially self-inflicted there. Phoenix, it was so early in the race when he spun himself out of the lead or fighting for the lead that it was tough to say whether he would have for sure won that race. And then Talladega, it was same situation. He wrecked, and he would have been in contention for the win. He would have been up in the top 5 to 6, but I'm not going to sit here and guarantee you he was going to win that race. So ultimately, yeah, he's been running fast at all types of racetracks. They've been winning on the short tracks, which is really important because that championship race is at Phoenix. My biggest concern for Denny has nothing to do with their speed or Denny Hamlin himself. It's this stupid playoff format, and the first 2 rounds are crapshoots. We've got road courses and super speedways covering 2 of the first 3 races in both the first 2 rounds, and that is horrifying if you're the points leader. Yeah, Hamlin's going to have a bunch of playoff points. Yeah, he's going to be fast at all those places. All it takes in that first round is a stupid wreck at Atlanta, getting caught up in. All it takes is a blown chicane at Watkins Glen, and if you don't have track position, you can't pass. And Bristol, if you don't win or if you have a meh race, then you're screwed. So my biggest fear for Hamlin right now is the playoff format, which I guess that's a pretty good place to be in because that means you're doing really well. Let's see here. Before the race, I was predicting Mayetta, New Jersey's Martin Truex Jr. would defend his win from 2023, even though it wasn't on a Monday. Yeah, I mean, he looked really fast early in this thing. As I said earlier, went from 15th to 1st in that first stage. Won the stage, looked really fast. And then they said he got some damage on the front of his car during a restart when it was Bowman or Larson in front of him. He just hit him really hard, did a little bit of damage, but even then he still had top 3 speed. So he's got that place figured out. I don't know what it is about Dover that he has figured out, but he won there with DEI. He won there with Furniture Row. He's won there with Joe Gibbs. I mean, he's got the place figured out. And so does his brother, apparently, Ryan Truex with the Xfinity win. In my opinion, the top 3 teams are Hendrick, Gibbs, and 23XI. I'd agree with that because Penske, Blaney's been doing actually pretty good this year. He's 7th in points, but Logano's on the border of not making it. Cindric's out of the playoffs right now. You look at Trackhouse, yeah, Suarez got a win, but he's like 18th in points right now. Chastain's 9th or 10th in points. But 23XI, I mean, Reddick's up there in the top 5 in points. I think Bubba's 12th, 13th, something like that. The wreck, actually, he might be 15th or 16th after the wreck now, but he's been top 12 in points most of the year. And even, despite the DNFs, despite the crashes and whatnot, he's been fast. So, and they've got a great track coming up in Kansas. Are Mondays still for Martin Truex Jr., even if there isn't any racing? I don't know. It's a valid question. Fantasy standings we will look at in a minute. Is Denny peaking too soon, says Duke Chronic. I kid you not. I thought about this last night. I was like, what if Denny's peaking too early? He's winning. Remember last year, Kyle Busch? Kyle Busch won 3 races out of the first 15, 14, 12, whatever the number was. Everyone's like, oh, Kyle Busch is looking like a championship favorite. Fontana, Talladega, Gateway, 3 different types of tracks. Like, oh, man, they're so good. Sure, they got some short track issues, but they'll fix that by the end of the year. Yeah, they actually regressed as the year went on. Ultimately, I don't think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to regress as the year went on or goes on. If anything, I thought they would have had a slow start because of the new car, the new body, but they came out swinging. And I just think they're going to continue to get better. So I don't think he's peaking too early, but you never know. We always saw it with Jimmy Johnson those years he won. He'd win a couple races early, and then they'd have the summer slump when they went to the tracks that Jimmy wasn't necessarily great at. And then the playoffs would show up and Jimmy Johnson win 6 of the 10 races in the championship. So maybe we see, Oops, my bad. That was unusual. I kicked the camera. But maybe they go on a slight slump, like a 3 to 4 week slump. Like Christopher Bell's in a 4 week slump right now. They have been terrible the past few weeks. Christopher Bell is 17th in points right now. What is up with that? Like, that's a conversation we got to talk about. My goodness. But yeah, I'm sorry I had to bring that up. But just looking at the near future, Kansas, a track that Denny Hamlin he's literally the defending winner of this race coming up. Darlington, one of his best tracks. Charlotte, the Coke 600, he won this race 2 years ago. Gateway's a new track. He'll probably be fast there. And then we hit a road course, and the slump might start there. Denny's never been a great road course racer. But then other than the road courses, I have not much concern for Denny Hamlin in terms of speed. But it is a very good question, Duke Chronic, on if he's peaking too soon. Let's see here. This might be controversial, but the only reason Hamlin won was his pit crew. It's not all about him air blocking. All the credit goes to his pit crew. The first thing he did was congratulate his guys. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we said earlier, is that his pit crew's been on fire. They got him the lead at Richmond. They got him the lead this past Sunday at Dover. That pit crew's been insane this year. I don't know what it is about them, but they've just been on it. They've been super fast. And that's, everyone talks about NASCAR being a team sport. Well, it showed this weekend. Hamlin's pit crew gave him the lead. Byron's pit crew cost him a good finish, and ultimately they ended up crashing out. So it's ultimately a team sport. Yes, the drivers have a big part in it, but, it's a team sport. So favorite paint schemes? Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. Oh, man, the 23 car looked great. The Air Force, the same paint scheme as one of the planes. That was a really cool paint scheme. The 43, the iconic STP paint scheme. Hard to not mention that one. I'd say those were my top two, the 23 and the 43. For the most part, everyone ran their normal paint scheme. The 10 had a new one, but it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't bad, but I just don't rate it super high. The 38 looked good. The 84 was all right. It was different. It was weird because it's Jimmy Johnson in a Toyota. But other than that, those are probably my favorites, the 23 and the 43. What can we do so that other teams can get into victory lane? The same teams are winning in Cup and Xfinity. More practice? I just think it's ultimately Gravy123 is the one who asked this question. I think ultimately this is just how it goes. We see the best teams regardless of the rules package, regardless of the horsepower, regardless of the type of track. We see the best teams up front. Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing will always be up there. They may have a slight regression like we saw it with Hendrick in that kind of 2018 to 2019 or 2017 to 2019 range, where Hendrick was only winning a couple races a year, but then they came back. Joe Gibbs Racing, they haven't really had that. I'm trying to think when the last time they really did bad was, but we're always going to see those two up front. Ford as a whole right now is not good, so we're kind of seeing it with Penske and Stewart-Haas. Well, Stewart-Haas has been in it for the past couple of years. But I don't know what you do directly to make more teams win. We are less than 2 years removed from a season that saw 17, 18 different winners. In 2022, we saw all 4 Hendrick cars win. We saw all 3 of the 4 Gibbs cars win, so that's 7. We saw... Did we see Blaney win in 22? I don't think Blaney won a points race, but we saw Logano win. We saw Cindric win. So that's 9. We saw... Oh, boy. We saw Bubba win. That's 10. We saw Kurt Busch win. That's 11. We saw Eric Jones win. That's 12. We saw Chastain win. That's 13. Suarez, 14. We saw... Did McDowell win in 22? No, McDowell didn't win in 22. we saw a lot of different winners in 2022. I want to say it's in that 17 to 18 range. So just 2 years ago, right at the beginning of this car, when everyone was figuring it out, we had a lot of parity. But now that most of the teams, including the better teams, have figured this car out, we've got a little bit more, separation in a sense. Sure, on the speed charts, everyone's looking close within a tenth, 2/10, 3/10. But ultimately, the ones who are covering the top of the speeding charts are Hendrick, Gibbs. Sure, we're seeing a couple new contenders like 2311 every once in a while, but there's a reason that these two teams are at the top. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, says Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. Grant says Denny Hamlin is his favorite driver. Good for you, Grant. Let's see here. Grant also says he used to be like Garfield, hating Mondays until the Monday after. Oh, Grant. Great friend of me and the channel, by the way. Everyone go check out Grant. Grant likes to play video games. So go check out his channel. A little weird seeing Jimmy Johnson in a Toyota at Dover. Yes, it was. Yeah. It's weird every time he gets in the 84 car, especially when it's a Toyota. It really is a Gibbs versus Hendrick season. It's so strange. Ford never shows up, and it's even more strange that Ford and Toyota have new bodies, and Toyota is already winning with the new body before Ford was. Yeah, I mean, Toyota figured it out really quick. Ford did not. That is where we're at. When is Ford's next opportunity to get the win? Short track, maybe. Darlington, maybe. Ooh, even then, I don't know about that. I don't know. I really don't know when Ford's going to win. It'll end up being like this week at Kansas. Like Hamlin and Larson will annihilate each other for the win, and Blaney will just scoot on through and get his first win of the season. I took Bell over Hamlin in fantasy matchup, and look what happens. Oh, speaking of, let's do it. Let's look at the fantasy standings. For those of you who are not aware, there's 6 people watching right now. If you're one of the 6 who is not aware, we have a fantasy league here on this YouTube channel. There's no great grand prize. You do not win like $1 trillion if you win the league. It's just for fun. We're just simply here to have fun, play some fantasy NASCAR. I was proud of myself this week. I finished 3rd in this week's race because ultimately I went with my brain and I didn't second guess myself. I went with 3 of the 4 Hendrick cars. The one Hendrick car I did not pick ended up wrecking out of the race, so that was a good job by me. So Larson, Bowman, and Elliott all got a lot of stage points, finished well. And then I also had Truex, the Dover Master. He won a stage. He finished 3rd. And then Kyle Busch. So I did pretty good with my lineup this week. But I'm going to pin this at the top of the chat. And then I will read you guys the current standings on the fantasy lineup. We have a new leader. I think he's a new leader. He might have been leading next week, but I think it's a new leader. Dan the Jets fan is leading by a whole 4 points over Big Hat LJ in fantasy. Good week for the Dan the Jets fan. Zerkman95 is in 3rd. It Factor Autosport Incorporated back into 4th place. 5th place is PC_18. 6th place is Dr. Zero. I am back up to 7th. I fell back to 9th last week. Back up to 7th. 8th place is RT Racing. 9th place is Pins_22. 10th place is Hell on Wheels 24. 11th place is Otterbear 8. 12th place is Matt Smith 53. 13th is 45 and 2311 fan. 14th is Stevie G. 15th is Micah MLB 15. 16th, that's funny, 15th is Micah MLB 15. You get it? 15. There, yeah, you guys get it. Shane Van Hamburger Buns is 16th, and Tyler Hernandez is in 17th. So feel free to join the fantasy league if you want to. As I said, it's for fun. We read out the standings here on the channel every single week, and just to have a fun time, because why not? Dale Earnhardt's birthday, yep. Yeah. Dale Earnhardt would have been somewhere 70 something. I can't remember what year he was born. But yes, it's been all over the Twitter that it's his birthday today. So rest in peace, Dale. Shout out to Jimmy Johnson, his best points position in the next gen era. Even if it's in a Toyota, his best result better than what he drove in a Chevy last year. Yeah, Jimmy in the next gen era has been struggling. No question about it. He struggled at the end of his career. 2019, 2020, he missed the playoffs. So, I mean, I'm not shocked to see him struggle. I get he's a 7-time champion. He's a Hall of Famer, all that stuff. But, I mean, you guys get what I'm saying here? Like, it's not exactly a shock to see him do so poorly by his previous standards. So, it's part-time. He doesn't know the car that well. I'm just glad he didn't wreck at any point this week. In every single race of the next gen era, he's wrecked in the race or wrecked in practice, and he finally went a week without incidents. And the fact that we're celebrating that for Jimmy Johnson is just, it's something. Yes, it is. But you know what? As long as he's happy, that's what I care about. He can run 28th every week as long as he's happy. I think it's more of like a development thing. Like he's trying to help the team learn some of these intermediate tracks when he runs. Even if he's doing bad, just log in laps so the team can get some extra data. The races are won in the pits. McDriver is at the front when pit stops are not huge for a race. But yeah, I mean, the pit stops are really important. There's a reason they're competitive pit stops, why teams celebrate getting first off pit road so much. Hey, at least think about this. At least we have more different winners than F1 in the last 7 years. Oh boy, if you're including NASCAR in the last 7 years, well, yeah, that number is going to be different. But if you're like doing this year in NASCAR versus the last 7 years of F1, I'd have to think about that. But that's kind of funny. I get what you're saying. Gregson was the top Ford. He's doing pretty good. Yeah, he had that big penalty early in the year with the roof flaps or something on the roof. Something on the roof. But they got that penalty. They lost 35 points. They were in the negative points. And now he's back up to like 22nd or 23rd in the points. Chase Briscoe currently is in the playoffs on points. So Stuart Haas, I came into this year thinking they were going to be absolute poo. They're not doing that bad this year. I'm going to say it. At least 2 of the cars. Barry, even though he has not had the results all the time, he's led some laps. He's qualified well. Priest needs to step it up a bit. But Barry's, they just got to put together the results. They got to get the finishes. Gregson is getting the finishes. Briscoe's getting the finishes. So Stuart Haas is doing better than I thought they would this year. Maybe it's just because everyone else in Ford is doing so bad that it makes them look a little bit better, but they're not doing terrible. Alex Bowman next win this year. Bowman and winning this year. He's always done good at Kansas and Vegas in the old gen car and this gen. I don't know why. Those 2 tracks, they are very similar. So it makes sense to why that he would run well at both as opposed to just one. But it could happen this week at Kansas. But I just think Larson, Hamlin, Reddick, Bubba, Truex, even Ty Gibbs, even Christopher Bell, those are going to be some tough guys to beat. But I think Bowman's got a great shot. I think he'll run top 10 this week for sure. But it'll be interesting to see how this week goes. Kansas is always a fun race, especially in the next gen era. Last year's race was the race of the year. We saw Larson versus Hamlin. We saw Reddick up there. We saw Bubba up there, but then he had like a tire blowout or something. But we have a lot of different contenders at Kansas. We got a lot of heavyweights up front, though, but it's always great racing. Toyota's going to dominate Kansas like always. Toyota's undefeated in the next-gen era car. I expect a lot of people picking a lot of Toyotas for the win this week. Yeah, my early pick's probably Toyota. I'm leaning Reddick right now. He's the most recent winner there. The 45 car is always great at Kansas. But Reddick and Bubba, I think they'll both be top 5. I think Hamlin will be top 5. Larson, my way too early top 5. Reddick, Larson, Hamlin, Bubba. The 5th spot I will give to Truex. I'll give it to Truex. I'm just going to lean Toyota. Like you said, I'm going to lean Toyota. Yeah, but they have won every Kansas race in the next gen era. The 45s won 3 of the 4, and the 11s won the 4th. I don't understand why Jimmy is getting hate now. I mean, what would you expect? A guy in his late 40s past his prime is a shell of his former self. Only reason he wants to drive is because it's fun. I don't think it's necessarily hate. It's just like it's just, first of all, it's weird to see him in a Toyota. For me, I just think it's weird because, you spent your whole life watching him in the Hendrick Lowe's 48, and now you flip the numbers, you've changed it to a Chevy, and it's like, ooh, this is weird. But I don't think it's necessarily hate. It's just like what's he doing out there? Yeah, I guess he's having fun, but do you think, like, really just run 28th every week or every 4 weeks? Like, what's he doing? But as I said, as long as he's happy, he can do what he wants. Chad and HMS fit Jimmy like a glove. That's what people argue. Yeah. Now let's get into business. Do you think SHR will sell a charter? Will colleagues sell and focus on their Xfinity side? I think SHR sells one. I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to anyone, but just purely guessing off of what I've read online from, that report that came out a month ago, they might sell one. I don't know who they sell it to. Maybe Trackhouse. I think Trackhouse is looking for a charter. I think, they've got so many guys lined up to be in a Cup car. SVG, Zane Smith. He's having a rookie year of all time. Connor Zilic has been killing it. He killed it in ARCA this past weekend. He's got a few more truck starts lined up. I think he has an Xfinity start lined up. So if Connor Zilic, if he continues to kill it, they might put him in a Cup car sometime soon. But as for Colleague, Colleague's fallen off. No other way to put it. Will they sell one of their charters? The only reason I could see them motivated to keep the charter is if they get some sort of deal like Zane Smith at Spire currently, where Trackhouse is like, we don't want to buy the charter. We don't have the funding for that right now, or we just straight up just don't want to buy a charter right now. But we want our guy in the Cup Series, and we're willing to lease him to you if you put him in the car. Like, you can have him drive for you. You can do all your tech, all your data, all your normal things with him. You just have to sign him. That 16 car does not have a full-time driver. Hey, next year if SVG's ready, let's put him in the Cup car. Hey, Connor Zilic, I know he's really young, but we think he's ready for the Cup car. Put Zilic in the 16, So they could do something like that. Maybe they sell. I don't know. That's just two big, giant guesses that pop up into my head. We need Chicagoland back. I can't keep saying it enough. We need more 1.5-mile D-shaped ovals. I get why, because Kansas has been so good. Vegas has been so good. But ultimately, I think Chicago has its race. With how good the Chicago street race was last year in terms of the race itself was really good, but also the ratings were really good. The attention was really good. Everything about it was really good. I don't see NASCAR going back to Chicagoland with the Chicago street race there. I think they want that to be the primary focus of the Chicago area, and going back to Chicagoland would take some eyeballs away from the street race and therefore, just kind of not ruin it, but would just kind of water it down. So I don't think they'll go back to Chicago unless the street race moves somewhere else. And right now, I know it's only been one of them, but I say keep the street race in Chicago. We'll see how this year's race goes. If it ends up being really good again, then great. Let's keep it there. But I'm very curious because this year, if we get a fully dry race, we get the full racing without issue. I'm very curious to see how the racing is. But I don't know. You could really race there last year. You really could, because everyone was new to it, because no one had driven the track, like actually driven the track before. Mistakes were being made. The mixed conditions with the weather made it exciting. And we saw a lot of passing going on. We saw a lot of racing going on. We didn't see a lot of single file like we saw at Watkins Glen, Indianapolis. Well, Indianapolis wasn't bad. It was more of a strategic race, but it wasn't as bad as Watkins Glen last year. But ultimately, I'm curious to see how Chicago goes this year. If SHR does sell, who's getting kicked out from SHR? And will Kroger hurt JTG in the long run since it's rumored to go to JGR? It's a good question. I still lean Priest in terms of who would lose their ride if they sell one charter. Gregson's too good right now. Briscoe's too good right now. I know Briscoe's contract is like kind of up in the air. There's no like real. I don't really know what his contract is, but it's like an option at the end of the year or something like that. So theoretically, you could say, oh, you don't have a contract. Bye. But he's been the best performing SHR guy this season. He's 12th in points. He's running good. Sure, he's not winning and he's not running top 5, top 10 every race, but he's in the playoffs right now. Gregson's been running too good. I know he had that points penalty, but he's outperforming the other two. And then Barry's been qualifying well, and he's been leading laps at the short tracks. Whereas Priest, I can't think of anything significant Priest has done this year. So it's tough. I hate to do it, but Priest would be the guy I'd pick right now to lose his seat. As for the sponsorship thing, yeah, it's just funny to think about that if they had found this sponsor 2 years ago, we would not be where we are today. Kyle Busch would not be in the number 8 car. So I don't know what the sponsorship deal would be. Would that be the 11 sponsor? Would that be someone else's sponsor? I don't know, but it's interesting. I'm curious to see how it comes out of this whole thing. Top 4, Eric Jones, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Kyle Larson. If you're talking about Kansas, you might have already missed one. Eric Jones is on the entry list for Kansas. Yes. But he has not been confirmed to race. I would not be shocked if he missed it. Any back injury usually lingers for a few weeks, as we've seen in the past with Eric Almirola, Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman. You miss multiple races, so it would be shocking to me, at least, if he only missed one race. So don't get your hopes up on Eric Jones in terms of racing this week. If he does, great. I hope he's back to being healthy, being good, but I just don't think he races this week. That's just my honest opinion. Speaking of contracts, Ford's contract with SHR, will they extend or bring a new manufacturer or switch to a manufacturer? Well, it won't be a new manufacturer. You need a couple years to develop that. You need a couple of years to figure that out. Talk to NASCAR, get everything checked legally in terms of like NASCAR legally, not like the United States government legally. Maybe you do have to do that too. I don't really know how that process works, to be honest. But if they were, like, let's say hypothetically, SHR goes to Honda. They start in 2027, 2028. One of those 2 years, Stewart-Haas Racing goes over to Honda. Well, you got to develop the engine, develop the cars, develop all this stuff, and you've got to have a manufacturer. You can't just run a homemade engine that runs 39th every week. So I think in that situation, sign a 2-year deal with Ford, finish out until Honda. Just accept the fact that Ford's going to give you a couple of explosive engines every once in a while and just tank. I know you don't get draft picks with tanking this one, but, it's a waste of everyone's time, sure, but, throw it out the window and, we'll see Honda in 2028. Perfect. Then we'll cook then. But if they were to switch manufacturers now, they'd probably want a long-term deal. Would they go back to Chevy? Maybe. I don't know. Would it be awkward? I don't know if it would be, because I don't really know how those meetings go, but it's an interesting conversation. Or would they go to Toyota? I know Toyota has talked about wanting to expand their team, wanting to expand their numbers in the Cup Series. And right now they've got 8 teams, technically 9 if you include Jimmy's 84 car. But they've been able to use everyone as a tier 1 team because they have such small numbers. If you add 3 or let's say 4 SHR cars, are you really going to be able to give everyone here tier 1 equipment, tier 1 whatever? I don't know. I really don't know. So it's an interesting topic. It's a topic we're going to be looking at until pen is put to paper. But ultimately, I do not know. It's a good question. I just don't know it. I just don't know the answer for you. But I feel like we haven't heard anything on that in the past few weeks about SHR and Ford SHR and their charters and all of that stuff. So I don't know. I feel like we've had a pretty quiet few news weeks here. I'm waiting for something that, like, this is about the time last year that the legacy to Toyota thing happened. 2 years ago, it was the Kyle Busch. This is about the time when the Kyle Busch saga started, when it was like, oh, there's a legit chance that he could not end up being at JGR. And then 3 years ago, it was Brad Keselowski to RFK. So let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's anything happening. Oops. Adam Stern, tweet something, please. Tweet something in terms of NASCAR news. What do you think about Michael Jordan being in victory lane at Dega, being emotional? Yeah, it was really cool to see him there, obviously, to show his passion in NASCAR. I mean, I don't think many of us doubted it. He's shown up to so many races at this point, but cool that he finally got to be there in victory lane. So, yeah, it's pretty neat. Oh, yeah, the entry list for next week. I guess we could talk about that. We could talk about Kansas. We talked about it a little bit already. As I said, I expect the Toyotas to be up front. I expect Kyle Larson to be up there. I think Chase Elliott did good in the fall. Bowman's been here good historically, so maybe some of those guys. Ooh, Ross Chastain's sponsor, Busch Light Crocs. Like, is that Crocs made of beer? That's kind of weird. Let's see here. Looking for weird sponsors. Normal. Somewhat normal. Oh, Riley Herbst is in the 15 this week. Wow. Good for him. A non-super speedway cup start. Really good for him. Wow, that's a big deal for Riley Herbst. Jimmy Johnson's on the entry list. Is there another open car? Austin Hill's on the entry list. Oh, Jesus Christ. The 24 is running that ugly Raptor scheme. That's what I was reacting to. I can't stand that paint scheme. Kansas, Matt Kenseth versus Joey Logano. Larson versus Hamlin. Gordon versus Harvick. Yeah, I was stressing that Gordon Harvick one. Thankfully, Gordon won, though. So it was all in good stress. If that makes sense. Yeah, that Kenseth Logano thing, little did we know that would start a nuclear war in NASCAR. That was like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and then Matt Kenseth went nuclear. Yeah, so I know those are two different world wars we just kind of mentioned there, but you know, the point being, if you smash them together, that's what it escalated to. And then the Larson Hamlin thing, yeah, I mean, still a great finish last year. I see Jordan more at NASCAR races than Tony would be at for his own team. I mean, Tony Stewart, he's got his drag racing now. I think he's actually racing in some of them, and then he owns the team with his wife. Tony Stewart's got a lot going on. I mean, Michael Jordan has a lot going on too, but it's an interesting point. Someone needs to, like, put a tally sheet. Like, oh, Jordan's been in a race. Tony's been in a race. You know, like, what's the count right now? In 2024, how many has Tony been to? How many has Michael been to? You know, put those numbers side by side. What I think will happen is Kroger leaves and goes to JGR. And why you ask, well, I'm going to say this is Truex's last season. Bass Pro Shops leaves and makes Kroger a primary sponsor. That's actually pretty good theory there because, you know, Truex, we don't know when he's retiring. He's on this year-to-year basis. But if he retires, then, you know, you got to find sponsorship. Bass Pro has always been with Truex since his Furniture Row days, even back to his DEI days. So they've got a good partnership there. But if they opt to leave JGR once Truex leaves, they got to find new space. Then the question would be, who do you put in the car? Do you keep the number 19? Do you change it to something different? There's so many questions. Do you bring the 18 back? That would be so funny. Truex retires, you bring the 18 back, you put brand new sponsorship on it, then you put someone else in the car. Like if this was 2 years ago, we would not be having this conversation once again, but it's still funny to think about. Oh boy, that's always quite the topic. Oh, here we go. I ask and I receive. All right. So, 2 minutes ago from Adam Stern. 2 minutes ago. Kroger Racing executive Paul Zendrick. Paul Zendrick is the VP of Corporate Partnerships at Kroger Racing, powered by the bunch of other words. He says that its vendor partners are loving having the NASCAR number decals moved forward on the cars. Oh, what in the world? I thought this was going to be something about the contract. I got my hopes up. I saw Kroger and executive. So basically, this executive at Kroger, I got my hopes up thinking that he was going to say something significant in terms of where they're going to be next year. But no, he just said our Kroger racing program partner brands are loving the much talked about and controversial number change to the cars. Our data shows that moving the number forward on the side of the car has been beneficial to our sponsors. What has your experience been with the change? I would love to see your data, sir. That's my response. Please show me where it says that everyone loves the numbers forward and that your partners love it. Please give me statistical data that I can see on a chart or a graph or a PowerPoint, even a PowerPoint. But whatever. The number slid forward. It's grown on me. There's a couple paint schemes that are still pretty horrendous, but it's grown on me. I don't complain about it as much. The time it bothers me the most will be in a week and a half at Darlington. I just think that should be the 1 week that we change the rules for the paint schemes and we just run the classic look. Everything, move the numbers back to their traditional spot. Just me. Other than that, it's grown on me. It just depends on how you use the space on the car. Put Chandler Smith in Cup. What's Truex leaves? Yeah, that's an option. I always thought that they were going to put John Hunter in that car. But, I mean, he's at Legacy now, so do you put John Hunter in that car? I don't know. It's a lot of questions. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So I guess we just have to wait until things actually happen. Whew. Well, all right. Well, I'm going to call that a live stream here. Thank you guys for watching. Glad to talk about Dover. It was a fun race weekend. Kansas coming up this upcoming week. I'm excited for it. Looking forward to it, but we'll see how it goes. Should be great racing as always at Kansas. I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be, whatever news decides to happen this week, if any news decides to happen this week. But thanks again for showing up to these live streams. I enjoy it. I'm glad we've made it a weekly tradition in a sense, but thanks again for watching. I'll see